Did you know there's a thing where some people put peanuts in Coca-Cola and drink/eat it?
No, I did not know that. Well,
That's weird, right? I think it's a Texas thing. It's weird, right? I tried it once and it's
peanuts?
Bad.
No way.
Yeah, it's not good. Sorry to any of our Texas fans if this makes the cut. But peanuts and Coke, not good.
You can't even.
I don't. Good.
So you know what? Because you hear about stuff like this, right? You hear about like weird concoctions that different regions eat or whatever, stuff that's like foreign to you. And you know that's fine. Everybody kind of, at the end of the day, different areas do different things. But my problem is, who the hell discovered that? Who figured out? who threw the peanuts in the Coke and was?
Good question.
Oh yeah, this the one.
And not only that, liked it enough to tell other people to do it, and somehow found the people who also like it to the point where it's a thing. It's a thing.
Got the people to agree. Yeah.
Yeah, but to be fair, like, have you ever tried Vegemite? Now I'm gonna make fun of our Australian listeners. Vegemite is an Australian spread. It's like a vegetable spread, and they grow up on it, so they grow up loving it. But it tastes horrible. It's so gross. They spread it on toast. It's good for you, so it is a good thing that they grow up like eating this. But it tastes so bad. I remember I was in Australia. And I grabbed a piece of toast thinking it had Nutella on it and took a bite, and it was Vegemite, and I nearly vomited.
Man, is it brown?
Oh yeah, it looks like Nutella, yeah.
Oh. Well, Nutella is different because that just it being brown is kind of sick. I mean, it makes sense, I guess, if it's like leaves and shit, but it's still kind of yucky.
Man, I'll just stick with some kind of nut butter and jam. Thanks. That's all I need. That's a good cold open.
Nut butter is nuts.
Nut butter.
That's crazy.
Nut butter is a great word. Let's cue the theme song with say it together. Nut butter.
Nuts butter. And you can chop that up and make it sound really nice. Quintuple of vocals, yeah.
I've been watching them for years, it's always been something that fit with all the animated characters that's doing their own bits. With a fry who's in the future and a family guy that sucks. With a father from a hill, a burger family runs a month. The show inspires is the same guy, except he totally say and diverse.
Let's watch cartoons that curse.
Yeah, that's bananas.
That's rough.
What the f*** is up, everyone? Welcome back to Cartoons That Curse. I'm Johnny. I'm here with my co-host Tariq.
Yo.
And we are here to talk about Bender's Big Score. So, to you listeners at home, this is probably months and months after we finished talking about the Fox seasons of Futurama. We are recording this 1 week after because we couldn't wait to watch Bender's Big Score again.
At all. It was like the day after. What was that? Was that like the day after?
It was. I think like literally, I feel like the moment we finished recording the 4th season, you were like, dude, I really want to talk about Bender's Big Score. I was like, I'm down.
Because it started because I don't know how I did it. I think it started because you and Nick showed me the intro song to Into the Wild Green Yonder, which I really love, and I forgot existed because y'all showed me because y'all thought, like, I told y'all that I didn't know it, and then like I was like, oh, this, I remember this, and then I really like it, and then YouTube recommended me the intro to Bender's Big Score, and I watched it, and I instantly bursted into tears, and I was like, I gotta watch this movie right now.
Man, it brought you back to a different time in your life. It was that meaningful.
Yeah, it's rough.
So yeah, we don't really know when this is going to come out. If this episode feels like a dip in quality from the episodes surrounding it, it's because this is only the 5th or 6th episode we've ever recorded. So who knows when this is coming out. But we were really excited to talk about Bender's Big Score, the first of the Futurama movies. So let's talk about it. I guess first, the important thing to talk about with Bender's Big Score is this is a revival. This is the revival of Futurama. It aired 4 years after the first ran ended, and about 5 years after they stopped producing the show because Fox split it up into 5 broadcast seasons, even though it was 4 production seasons.
Right.
So I feel like we should talk a little bit about how that happened, because at the time, unheard of, not a thing. Like,
Absolutely.
shows coming back, it just was not real. So literally, like, the moment the show ended on Fox, Adult Swim picked it up for syndication in 2003 with Family Guy. So Family Guy and Futurama became the 2 like late night Adult Swim syndicated shows, and they were both monumental successes in those time slots for Adult Swim. Who knew that just putting these shows in the right time slots would yield great results? Who could have guessed?
Right.
So because of this, and in addition to this, there were really high DVD sales for both Family Guy and Futurama's DVDs. Those did really well. So by 2005, Fox had decided to revive Family Guy, which at the time, unheard of. I remember like scouring the internet for news about this, because I was like, is it possible that these shows could come back? And so many people were like, no, this has never happened. It's not going to happen. And then words started slowly trickling, and that like Seth MacFarlane was talking to Fox, and that they were maybe working on more episodes, and then that they were making more episodes.
Right.
And sure enough, in 2005, Family Guy came back, and it is still on the air.
Yep,
so
ain't going nowhere.
It's not going anywhere. So right after this, in 2005, Comedy Central started negotiating to take over syndication, with the possibility of making more episodes of Futurama. The thing is that if you're syndicating the show, the show is still owned by 20th Century Fox. So Fox TV had to approve and greenlight new episodes, even if they were going to be on a different channel. They still had to go through that process. This is one of my favorite stories about the straight to DVD movie season of Futurama. They came to them and they initially said, well, let's make this straight to DVD movie. We can maybe cut it up into 4 episodes and air it on Comedy Central later. David X. Cohen and the writers and the producers said, well, we want to do more than one. We kind of want to do 2 movies. So they decided their best bargaining tactic was to go to Fox and say, we want to do 4 movies. And they assumed Fox would be like, that's a lot. Let's cut it down to 2. And they would get the 2 movies they wanted to do. Right. They went to Fox, said, let's do 4 movies. And Fox said, okay, let's do it. Which is great. You know, also like it ultimately became basically a full production season, 16 episodes. That's a solid production season. I mean, they call it 16 episodes. It's 4 movies. They did end up getting cut down into 4 episodes apiece and syndicated on Comedy Central as the 5th season. In fact, if you watch on Hulu, they're right now split up into individual episodes rather than full movies.
As season 6.
It is listed as season 6 because that is broadcast order, correct?
Right.
It is still production season 5, but it was broadcast season 6. And it's interesting. They do some other stuff in there. Like they cut them down a little bit, so some of the jokes don't make the cut. But they also, at the beginning of every episode, add in a little previously on to catch people up in case they're tuning in the middle. And they animated a couple of new sequences that are mostly just characters saying previously on Futurama and then a highlight reel. So it's nothing substantial. But that was how this season came to be. And so it began in 2007. I don't remember the exact date, but I think it was late 2007. The first DVD movie was released. Yes, November 27th, 2007, released on DVD. And
ain't that something, man? The 2 Matt Groening cartoons got a movie in 2007.
That is something. Yeah, I forgot that the Simpsons movie was 07.
Yeah, it's July, right? Yeah, July 27th.
This is obviously a little different. Like, I don't think this, but I'm sure this was definitely done on more of a TV budget because it was a straight to DVD situation,
right? And it wasn't done. Well, obviously, at a certain point, the productions overlap, but the Simpsons movie was in production since like 2001. And
right,
like,
for sure.
You know, the Futurama films were kind of like tighter productions, I guess.
Yeah, it was probably a 1.5 to a 2 year production cycle for that, but they were definitely overlapping the writing. and they did this interestingly because it's not quite the same as a full production season, because normally for a full production season, you get your writer's room back. You bring in your writer's room and you break every story with the writers. And I think it's possible that they brought in writers to break the stories, but they effectively just had a couple of writers covering all of these straight to DVD Futurama movies. So this Bender's Big Score has a story by credit of Ken Keeler and David X. Cohen. So obviously David X. Cohen helped break all of these stories, but the screenplay is Ken Keeler. I think it's a similar situation for each of the other ones, which are Beast with a Billion Backs, Bender's Game, and Into the Wild Green Yonder, which we will talk about. Oh yeah, I guess we should say that too. We're gonna cover this season just one movie at a time. So we're gonna have 4 individual episodes. So this is just on Bender's Big Score. The next one you'll see will be on the Beast with a Billion Backs, then Bender's Game, then Into the Wild Green Yonder. But they had longtime Futurama writers write these scripts. Like the second one was done by Eric Kaplan, who obviously wrote a lot of episodes of Futurama. Bender's Game, I think Bender's Game has a weird, it's like every part was written by someone else. And
that sucks.
Sorry to say it, but you can tell when you watch that movie.
The more because we talked about this off. I think we talked about this off here. I don't think we talked about it on here. But Bender's Game is the only one I haven't seen. The other ones has been, aside from Bender's Big Score, the other ones has been long enough for them to feel like new movies when I watch them now.
Right.
But Bender's Game I haven't seen at all. And the more you tell me about Bender's Game, the more I'm like, oh shit.
I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to shit on any of it because I love Futurama, but that is definitely my least favorite movie. And I think you really can tell that each part was written by someone different. It's the one of these 4 movies that feels very segmented. It doesn't feel like one cohesive story. And then Into the Wild Green Yonder was once again written by Ken Keeler. So they basically had Ken Keeler start with Bender's Big Score and then immediately start working on Into the Wild Green Yonder, while their other writers worked on Beast with a Billion Backs and Bender's Game. And they also alternated directors.
It's just kind of comparing, like, if you look at like the written by for the Simpsons movie, there's like everybody's up there. It's like Matt Groening, John Swartzwelder, I think James L. Brooks is there. Like there's everybody's I'm looking at there. It now. Like they just kind of made everybody do something like on it. And I still think the movie came out great. Yeah, there's so many people. I really like the Simpsons movie. Yeah, and like a lot of them were former showrunners. You got Al Jean and Mike Reese, you got David Merkin, you got Mike Scully, you got Matt Selman, who is currently kind of taken over showrunning duties, which is interesting. Right. I always forget that the music is by Hans Zimmer for that movie. That's wild. Yeah, and that's rad.
Yeah.
Like, of course, for the biggest animated show of all time to go to the theater, you go and get like the biggest, known for the biggest film scores. Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the biggest men in the biz, especially at the time. He was probably potentially coming off of Batman to do this, you know, like he's working on this at the same time as The Dark Knight, I bet.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I think that might actually be the overlap.
Right. That's wild. So Bender's Big Score, though. Bender's Big Score was the first one back. Their first new Futurama first new Futurama aired in about 4 years. The first, it was a big deal. I was so excited about this coming back.
Same.
I was excited about Family Guy coming back, but like I can't really explain how stoked I was for Futurama to be coming back. And this first movie really did it for me. Like I was so stoked on this story. And we're gonna have to do this a little differently because normally we're going down episode by episode, but we just have to run through the plot of Bender's Big Score. Do you have any thoughts? I guess so. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
So what you said about like being excited that Family Guy was coming back, but being really excited that Futurama was coming back. So I got into both shows around the same time, and both were through syndication, right?
Right.
Saying that to say though, I got into Family Guy without knowing Family Guy was gone.
Right. I think a lot of people are that way because it's been on so much longer than it was gone, you know?
Right. But Futurama, I knew like it was gone. Like I knew like, and as the Adult Swim, how they ran it, I ended up seeing every episode and I knew which one was the last one. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then I just kind of was like, oh yeah, this is over. Like Futurama is actually over. It's just a funny show that I like now. And then, when I don't remember how I found out they were doing the movie, because that's the thing too. It's not like, I mean, you could find out online back then, but it wasn't like now where it's like you just get a message in a group chat of like an article saying that new Futurama in 2026.
Trending on Twitter. Yeah, it's like trending on Twitter and everyone knows the moment that drops, you know?
Right. It wasn't like that.
I remember for Family Guy, on some fan site, finding a cut up clip of a radio show of Seth MacFarlane confirming that they were making more Family Guy. And that was the first time that in my mind, I was like, this is real. But it was like literally it was so difficult to find that I think I had to download the audio clip because we couldn't even stream it back then. It's wild. It is absolutely wild. Like how inaccessible this information was unless you like dug for it. Now it's like thrown in front of your face without you asking for it.
Right.
But you know, I mean, the moment that King of the Hill revival news like started going around, it was everywhere. It was all over.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It's crazy to think that that's just how it operates now. Like even the Simpsons movie that came out the same year, I remember finding out that it was gonna be made, but I found out the way that they wanted you to find out, and I was a kid, so it really worked.
A movie trailer, yeah.
I went to go see Ice Age 2. I think it was that one.
The Meltdown.
The Meltdown.
Don't forget
sorry.
which one it is.
Ice Age 2, The Meltdown, featuring Josh Peck and Queen Latifah. Yes, that one. I saw that, and right before it was they had this little teaser trailer, and it was like an S on the screen, just like leaping its way onto the big screen, and I audibly said, "Superman?" And then they panned out, and it was Homer, and I was like, "Oh no!"
That's so good.
Like,
man,
yeah, it was rad. I'll never get that emotion back.
This is making me want to cover the Simpsons movie too. I want to talk about the Simpsons movie.
Let's do it right after this one. Same night. Let's go.
You guys won't hear that one for another year, but we're recording it tomorrow. So, all right. Well, let's talk about this movie. So this movie opens. I love the opening shot of this movie following the owl, which we didn't even talk about in any of the last 4 episodes about Futurama, that owls are like the rats of the future. Owls are everywhere. So we're following this owl, flies into the Planet Express building. Really cool shot going in like the first ever HD widescreen Futurama shot. It was so cool to see. And so they come into the Planet Express building, and all of a sudden we've got this roll call. Like we're doing a fun roll call. All our favorite characters are back.
It's so cinematic too. I love they introduce Leela, Fry, Bender, and Amy, I think, in the same shot. And it's a beautiful shot. And the order they go in and like the way it's paced out is really, really gorgeous.
And then we see Zoidberg. He's stealing Fry's lunch out of the fridge because he thought it was his. Showing all the characters are back. They're all their normal selves, just as we remember them doing their things. It's fun. It's like a fun reintroduction to everyone. And then we actually get some pretty fun meta humor with Farnsworth talking about
they
how
hammer it in, yo. I didn't, because as a kid I remember it being like, oh wow, they're really going for it, but they hammer it the hell in. Like they stretch it as much as they possibly can. Like, what does this mean for us and our many fans? And there's a bunch of fucking fans. Like,
whenever I make a Futurama video and I'm talking about the fans, I use that shot, which is my favorite shot. It was definitely like a little overkill, and I feel like you see a lot of I feel like you see a lot of reboots do this. I remember this was not a show I watched anywhere past the opening scene, but I remember watching the opening scene to Fuller House, the sequel to Full House. And every beat in that opening scene is just like old character you remember walking back in, and the whole crowd goes wild. And it's like, it just gets to a point where it's generally annoying in those instances. But here it felt quick, natural. It felt right. You know what I mean? Like here's every character. The Fox/Box network stuff was funny, but it is also like they really did just beat them over the head with it. They like really are just like the asinine morons who fired us were fired themselves for incompetence. But I kind of love that shit. I mean, like at the same time, you know, Simpsons, Family Guy, all these shows have made fun of Fox for their entire runs while being on Fox. Run. It's just kind of part of it. Right. But this was like very specific, like those asinine morons who fired us were themselves. Yeah, it's really silly. Like we're back on the air, flying on the air in our spaceship. You know?
And then so this is one thing I actually didn't notice about the film, but I notice now is that Professor says like they were beaten up, which it's a whole funny bit where he's like they're beaten up and they cheer less and less, and then until it gets to the point where they're like they died and everybody's like and he says they've been grounded up into a pink powder, and Fry's like why? So there's many uses for it. And the powder is in the whole film. It's in the whole the executive powder is in the entire film. I never realized that. It's all
that was never a joke that like super landed for me, but I still kind of appreciated the dedication to the bit. You know, they just kept going with it the whole time. I also like that when how like everyone stops laughing except when they say they died. Bender laughs. It's like a fun cold open though. It's like kind of a bigger cold open for this movie, and they do all of this fun meta humor. All of a sudden they're all partying because they're back, even though they didn't even know they were gone. You know, right?
Which is like, how did they keep going? Did they just not show? It's not worth thinking about. But it's like, did they just not show up to work for 2 years?
That's the other thing. It's like there's a few year gap here. What happened in those years? Like they ultimately just skip it. But that is a time period in the Futurama timeline that is like largely unexplored. I wonder what the hell happened.
Right? Yeah. What is that?
Yeah. If they ever wanted to, they could just be like, we're gonna make a couple episodes that take place then. This all takes place in 3005. Yeah, exactly. The pre-sequel.
That's right.
So the cold open ends. They have this bigger opening sequence that starts from the ambulance. Oh wait, we got to talk about how Hermes gets his head cut off after doing some limbo.
Right.
Which is a big ongoing story in the movie, Headless Hermes, which is it's one way to start your movie, I guess. Cut off one of your characters' heads.
Which is like, aside from really just one, you can kind of make an argument for Ben-Hur, but like aside from how Hermes requisitioned his groove back, this is the most he's done so far.
This is one of the heaviest Hermes plots in the whole show. And granted, it's partially because it's spread out over 4 episodes. It's definitely a subplot, but it is over 4 episodes that the subplot is ongoing.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting one. We talked about this a little bit in some other episodes, but it is interesting how like instantaneously LaBarbara is just like, nope, you're not a person anymore. It's time for me to go find Gwen a new dad.
I don't get it, because I remember saying in the season 2 episode, and that we were talking about don't make me say the episode title name again. The groove back.
How Hermes requisitioned his groove back.
Yeah. We talked about I remember specifically saying that I felt like Hermes and LaBarbara's relationship was like the strongest one in the show at that point, because it really was just constant support. She wasn't. It wasn't. There weren't any jokes at either of the other one's expense or anything like that. It was just like, no, Hermes, I know you. You're better than this. You can do this. You can do that. You could have this whole
Right.
place jumping if you really got in front of it. And she's just, people get it's normal not to care because like she is such a minor character, but she's completely different in this film.
Yep.
Like totally different.
I feel like they were just like, I feel like part of it is that they wanted to give Hermes a conflict, you know, and they wanted to give him some sort of story. And so like for that, and you know, there are some really funny parts to that subplot. I think there's some really funny stuff, but it does feel weird. It feels out of left field that they're just like, oh yeah, now La Barbara doesn't respect Hermes because he doesn't have a body.
Right. Which is it is just kind of, in theory, that's a funny thing, right? It's like you just
right.
It's like that's the deal breaker. Like she's like, the boy needs a dad. Like, like okay.
Why can't he be a dad without a body? That's so weird. Especially given that the problem is like, oh, his body won't be ready for a few weeks. Like, nope, we got to go find a new dad.
And because we listened to the commentary for Ben-Hur,
right?
And I remember them saying that before the show ended, originally they were like, they really liked Barbados Slim, and they were trying to figure out what else they could do, but nothing really worked.
Right.
So when I realized, after hearing that, I realized how much of him is in this film. I was like, okay, so this is them trying to do that.
Right.
And I guess in order to do that, they had to change some gears on La Barbara in order to like make him an actual threat, because La Barbara they had before probably wouldn't care. I mean, it was established that was her ex-husband, but like still the La Barbara before probably wouldn't care as much, but they had to mess with her in order to get him in, I guess.
Yeah, you can definitely see the breadcrumb trail of them like, oh, they wanted to use Barbados Slim, they couldn't figure it out, so they used him as like part of the conflict in Hermes' story for this movie.
I'm happy. I love him.
You know, yeah, he is really funny in this movie, and there's some really funny moments between Hermes and Barbados, like when Hermes' body is backwards and he's like, you're looking a little backwards, Hermes, like you've always been a little forwards with my wife. Yeah, it's an interesting, you know, I'm glad on one hand, I'm like glad we got a good Hermes focused subplot, and he ultimately like saves the day from the scammers. They hook the ship and like they hook everything into his brain, and his big bureaucratic brain is the one that like is able to control the fleet of ships to destroy all the Death Stars, and that's fun. I think that's good. I'm glad we got like a good like Hermes saves the day episode, and we didn't get many Hermes episodes in the original run.
Nah, like I said, the groove back one is the only like he's in the front.
Right.
They pair him with Professor when they invent Dwight a couple times.
That's right.
And then he just kind of does the limbo stuff for the first 4 minutes of Ben-Hur, and that might be it. Like, you know what I mean? Like
pretty much all of it.
Yeah.
So the first scene where they're like they're trying to deal with his now decapitated body and head is when we meet Lars Fillmore. Let me ask you something.
Right.
When you watched this movie the first time, did you figure it out?
No.
Did you figure out the twist? No, me either. No. Granted, I was a teenager, but I do know a lot of people. There are a lot of people who just 9. Figured it out.
Definitely not.
Yeah. So I feel like in retrospect, it's so obvious. You watch it and you're like, oh, that's just Billy West, you know?
Well, yeah. But to be fair, everybody's just Billy West.
Everyone's just Billy West. True.
Sorry.
That's true. But I love Lars, and I love his storyline, and I really, really liked that twist. It's probably one of my favorite stories. Is the Lars story is one of my favorites in all of Futurama. I think it's really high up there. Mm-hmm. And at the time it was mind-blowing. Like once I knew there was something more to Lars through that movie, but once they revealed at the end, spoiler alert, that he is a time paradox duplicate of Fry. If you're watching this without watching the movie, that's weird.
Yeah, you're wrong. You're doing it wrong.
But once they reveal that, I had known there was something more to him, but like I was like, that is so cool. Like, what a cool idea is that this alternate Fry went and lived his life and became more mature, and to the point where he became the person that Leela wanted in her life. And I've talked a lot about Lars. And there's a video I did about Lars, but
right.
I think one of the coolest things about Lars' story is how it isn't until he is, until he's willing to let Leela go and realize, okay, I need to do what's best for her. This isn't about me. This is about like Leela's happiness. And like the truth is that she wants to be with this Lars person, and I need to be okay with her being happy doing that. And it's like this big emotional growth. And you see it through his story with Lilu, with the narwhal, that through letting Leela go and letting Lilu go, he emotionally matures, and then is when he realizes that he is Lars. And the other cool thing about this is that through Lars's intervention in our timeline, in the main timeline, it actually propels Fry's growth forward to accept that Leela wants to be with someone else. Like Fry, the Fry is the whole movie, very upset that Leela's with Lars, and to the point where he wants to sabotage the wedding. And then when the wedding is called off, he's all happy about it, but Leela is obviously devastated. And so it's not until he realizes that, oh wow, by being selfish in this situation, I have made the person I care most about miserable.
Right.
And that is when he is like, oh, I need to let Leela live her life, and I can't be this selfish. And so like in a way, our Fry matures faster than he would have naturally because of Lars.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it like that.
It's cool, man. Like I love, that's one of the reasons I love that story so much. It's because like we meet a really cool alternate version of Fry, who I think is a great character, and it also helps inform the trajectory of our Fry. It's cool. It's a good story. I love Bender's Big Score for that story so much. I guess we jumped right into the Lars stuff, but this movie is so long. There's so much to talk about for this. Let's talk about the scammers. Let's talk about the villains of the movie, the nude scammers. How did you like these characters? I think the main one is David Herman. It sounded like a David Herman character. Okay. But how did you like them as villains?
I think they're cool. I think they're all right. I think they are pretty funny. And when I think of like the memorable Futurama villains, they are kind of like in the middle, like a little mid tier kind of. But I do think they're memorable, and I do think that they're really fun. I think the most interesting parts of their scheme is done by Bender.
Mm-hmm.
Like totally. All of the actual like oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. Like it really does. It is kind of, once Bender gets that virus, like he kind of takes over all of that, and I really like all of that stuff too.
Yeah, I guess this is why this is called Bender's Big Score. He's the one scoring all this free stuff, right? Yeah. I've always felt the same way. I like their scheme. I like the idea of scammers. I felt like some of their stuff is like kind of just annoyed me. Like they feel a little annoying in certain scenes, but overall, I think they're fun villains with like a fun motivation, which is just like, let's just scam everyone out of their stuff and take over the world. Right. It's a fun means to take over the world, scamming everyone, like to the point where they scam the president, Yeah. So this first this obviously this is divided into like 4 acts kind of, because it's like 4 episodes long. And the first one ends after they're scammed out of the Planet Express building, and then they discover the time code on Fry's ass, which is now, I believe, the 3rd type of time travel we see in the show. We got the time skips and time keeps on slipping. We got the Roswell that ends well time travel. And now this is the time code. And this is a different form of time travel, which causes all kinds of problems with canon. And
this is another instance of, because I brought this up in Leela the Hurdles one, where every time time travel gets brought up, the professor gets so mad.
Yeah, this doesn't make sense.
He got so mad. And that's what it reminds me of when we first started talking about Futurama, and you told me about how they didn't, like, when they went in, they like, no time travel. We doing everything but that. And then they ended up doing it. It seems like the professor is like them internally, like, fam, you said you weren't going to do this. And
I think
you keep doing it.
I think the professor is like not only them, but it's also like their surrogate for those the audience members who struggle with the logistics of time travel stories. You know what I mean? So like even in this opening, when Nudar goes back a day and comes back and there's 2 of them, and he's like, this makes no sense. This is a paradox. Like, that's what this is. This is a paradox. And they kind of write it off as, like, they say this is a paradox correcting time code, and therefore every time paradox duplicate is somehow killed in universe. They have a tangible thing that kills the duplicate in universe. And that's like a big part of the ongoing story. It's why Lars throws off the wedding, because he knows he's doomed, because he is a time paradox duplicate. Right. So in some ways it's like they can get away with anything because it's a paradox correcting time code. You know what I mean? So like, but it's always wrinkled my brain. I made a whole video about Lars versus Fry's timelines, because here's the thing. We see that Lars goes back in time. Fry goes back in time / Lars, and he lives out his life from from January 1st, 2000. He lives out Fry's life for 12 years. I guess for a few of those years he's out on the boat. But because of that, all of the events of Jurassic Park, in which we see when we see Seymour desperately trying to find Fry, that can't happen in this timeline.
Right.
All of the stuff in the Luck of the Fryrish, when they're like, oh, Fry is missing, and he names his son after Fry because he's missing, like, that doesn't make any sense anymore.
Right. You're naming a whole bunch of stuff I wrote down, actually, because this is all stuff that I thought about. The first thing I thought about was Yancey. Was Yancey's son. When Bender shows up, says, I'm looking for Philip J. Fry, and then Yancey calls him, and you think Fry's gonna come out, but it's actually his son.
It's little Fry. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's a nice little thing for Futurama fans to go, oh yeah, but why they weren't close. So why did he name him after him this time?
I guess that's the question. I guess there's a few things. I mean, there's a few things that you can do headcanon wise. I mean, I guess the fact that this is a paradox correcting time code theoretically means that history can't be altered too significantly, right? So like theoretically, that's kind of what they wrote into this failsafe, even though it's not super explained. But because it is paradox correcting, theoretically, the things that Fry goes back in time to do shouldn't change major aspects of the timeline. You know what I mean? Philip J. Fry Jr., or his nephew, is like a big part of history, right? He's the first man on Mars. So changing his name is like, it's a big thing, right? That's a big change. In my video about this, I talk about it too, but I guess there's a few ways you can think about it. Some are are the events that we saw in flashbacks a timeline that no longer exists? You know what I mean? Like, is that a timeline that happened, and then because the time code was used and they went back in time? Did this create a new timeline in which things happened a little differently? Because the other thing we see is that we see Seymour get fast fossilized.
Mm-hmm. I was going to bring that up too. Yeah.
And that's actually something that wasn't explained in Seymour's original story.
No. Yeah. And it's played off like it's kind of supposed to be like a ha-ha thing for fans, but like Futurama fans think about stuff like that. So they're like, wait, so what the hell does that mean? You know what I mean? It's not like I'm laughing now. It's more like wait, what is this even, what are even the implications of that?
And there are even episodes that come in the revival seasons. There's one, spoilers, Game of Tones is one where Fry gets to revisit his mother. And so the thing about that scene is when he revisits his mother is that she is dreaming about the New Year's Eve football game that was on when he went missing. Like that was that. And that's a thing that in Luck of the Fryrish, she brings up when thinking about Fry's having gone missing. Like she remembers that game. And so it is implying that his mother is like thinking about the day he went missing, is dreaming about the day he went missing.
Right.
And so,
but if we follow this timeline, he never went missing.
He didn't go missing until 2012 when he went and refroze himself.
He still does go missing, right? He doesn't,
right?
Yeah, because he's
I've had a lot of people comment that maybe when he went on the fishing boat that he did it without telling anyone. But the thing is that young Philip J. Fry tells Bender that his uncle's on a fishy boat, so he clearly told some people that he was going on this.
Yeah, that's true.
Thing.
Yeah,
and so therefore he couldn't have been named after him unless, I don't know, it doesn't line up timeline wise. So like there are these issues with it, but I think that's just the nature of, it's just unfortunately the nature of this kind of time travel story. When you really think, right. I mean, when you think about Roswell That Ends Well, like that doesn't make any sense either. Fry can't be his own grandfather. That's not a thing. So you can't think too hard, you can't think too hard about it.
But that one is it kind of only messes with one thing. And I think that's why we didn't talk about it when we talked about the episode. We just talked about how great the episode was.
Right.
But this one, like we're talking about, there's so many other things that happen throughout the show. And you could, if this were any other kind of show, if this were like I don't know, look at the figures on my desk. If this was like a Phineas and Ferb time travel thing, right? You could just kind of nudge it off because of the nature of Phineas and Ferb and the kind of show that it is. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like a silly show where like anything could happen. But with Futurama, they take pride. They take pride in the fact that like the little details and everything kind of connects and everything is supposed to make sense. And I think that's why like sometimes it raises eyebrows, especially if like we just spent a whole month watching the entire thing. So like, of course we're thinking about it, you know what I mean? Like, cause we just saw it all. So,
and I definitely think that in a way, it is, this is their first return back. And in a way it's fan service. In a way it's like, hey, look, Fry had a happy ending with Seymour. Hey, look, Fry had a happy ending with his brother. You know what I mean? It's like, it is cathartic to see him living like this. The sequence of montages where he's living out his life with his family is really great. Like I love that sequence. Mm-hmm. Even if it draws into question some of the events of the show. So I guess personally where I've come around is like, I'm kind of glad they didn't get too bogged down by those details to sacrifice a better story. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I know not all Futurama fans feel that way. A lot of Futurama fans are very into those details and those details are very important to them. But to me, Luck of the Fryrish, Jurassic Park, those episodes still exist and they still make me feel the things they make me feel.
Yes.
And knowing Bender's Big Score exists doesn't make me think less of those episodes. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It still makes me feel very emotional at the end of those episodes. So, and in the end of the day, I really love the story they told with this time travel stuff. So for me, I'm okay with it. I understand why people have issues and like, it's fun to talk about them. It's fun to talk about these little minutia in the Bender's Big Score story. But, I'm glad that they prioritized a more impactful story over the details, you know?
As a compact film, like as a package in general, it's really tight knit. They cover all the bases as a film. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's why I'm cool with it too. I'm cool with, you know, fudging some details for the film. It's like if the film had holes, like if like you started thinking like, well, wait, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Then it could probably maybe be an issue. But like I don't know. I couldn't think of any. They covered all their tracks.
Yeah. I mean, there is the fact that like he only knew his name was Lars because he met Lars.
I know. I thought that too. Like, oh, okay. I'm gonna name myself Lars because that's what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. Whatever.
But in the end, that to me feels very similar to like Fry being his own grandfather. It doesn't make sense logistically, but it works for the story. You know, like it's fine. I was also thinking watching this today. Ultimately, I'm glad it's not because in the revival seasons, there are some episodes that I adore. But this feels like it could have been another great series finale. I think this would have worked because you get all of these cathartic scenes where like, oh, Fry, like this other Fry got to hang out with his family and Seymour and all that stuff. That's like really good fan service for a finale. The ending has like a very similar implication as a lot of these other finales where it's like, oh yeah, Fry's been with Lars this whole movie, but Lars was Fry and now Fry is more mature and there's clearly a path to their future together.
Right.
It almost feels like it would have worked. It would have worked as a finale, even though ultimately I'm glad it wasn't. Yeah.
While we're kind of talking about that, and this is a result of them doing 4 of these in a row. But I remember feeling kind of, well, not when I say I remember, I mean I remember earlier today, not when I was a kid. I don't think I cared as a kid, but right now it did kind of make me go like, damn, this film doesn't have an ending because they just kind of lead you in to the next movie,
to the next thing.
And that kind of sucks because I just kind of wish it had like one of those nice Futurama endings that make you smile. Instead, they do go for letting you know that there are other implications because, you know, they got to make you go buy the next DVD. So
true.
That just kind of has to happen. That's just kind of a casualty of it. But damn, it doesn't have an ending.
You're right, though. You're right. I guess I didn't even think about that. I think if this were to be a finale, it would need to end with the Lars funeral scene and like them, you know, putting the tattoo on Fry's ass. But you're right. And the other weird thing about that though is that while I do kind of like that, part of me likes it because while Futurama had serialized elements in its original run, in the whole run, this is the only season where there's something that crosses over between stories immediately. But the weird thing is that they only did that for the first 2 movies. That leads directly into Beast with a Billion Backs, but Beast with a Billion Backs doesn't have an ending that leads into Bender's Game, and Bender's Game doesn't have an ending that leads into the Wild Green Yonder. Like they only did it for these first 2 movies, which is interesting. And I almost wish they had gone all in or not done it at all. You know, like
okay. I'm glad we're on the same page because when you just told me that, I'm like, I don't think I like that.
Yeah, I think in the end, like I ultimately do like the cliffhanger ending, and I think that's, especially visually, I think it's really cool watching the universe tear open, which was set up in the movie. It looks really cool. And then personally, I like Beast with a Billion Backs. It's a lot of people's least favorite of the movies, but I like that they use that for a very different story. Like it's not like the crack in the universe continues the same. It doesn't really continue the same story of Bender's Big Score. It just creates a new problem that is now the subject of another movie. And I like that. And I do kind of wish that they had figured out something from Beast with a Billion Backs that led into Bender's Game, and something from Bender's Game that led into The Wild Green Yonder. Something along those lines. Because, you know, part of me is like, especially now watching Disenchantment, part of me is like, I would have really liked to see the Futurama staff give us a serialized Futurama season. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think this is a show that could really utilize that formula well, because they were already trying to do that stuff before it was a thing, you know, for these kinds of shows. But you know, in the end, it is what it is. I really like this straight to DVD movie season. It's definitely a half nostalgia thing. I think Bender's Big Score is like the really good one. Like this is the one that is great.
Right.
And the rest I feel like I have more nostalgia for than I have like a real passion for their quality, you know? Mm-hmm. But these are movies that when I'm going to sleep, I'm like, I'm just going to throw on a Futurama movie. I'll just put on one of the Futurama movies and fall asleep watching it. So I've seen the first half of all of them like 20 times. All right, let's see. What other funny things happen in this movie? I love the Return of the Globetrotters. The Return of the Globetrotters is great.
Man, they give Bubblegum and Hermes the funniest relationship in this. It's so good.
I've heard dog best.
Yeah. I like that a lot. What's the other one? I wrote it down somewhere.
Maybe it's the same one I wrote down. We'll see.
It's
I like their fancy. What does the professor call it? They're like fancy Globetrotter algebra or whatever. He's like, yeah. My favorite line from the Globetrotters is they're in the showers, they're washing off in the showers, and Bubblegum goes, "That Q brute was a real buzzer beater, Clyde." The idea of utilizing sports terminology like the Globetrotters would to math is just funny. That's a funny idea. It's really good. Yeah.
I like the wedding. I think that's where they are. And Bubblegum's like, you gotta tell the barber like that your body like is doomed. And he's like, I'll do it after the festivities.
Oh man, so good. And also like the whole speaking of that, when I love the sequence when they go back, find get a duplicate body, and then Zoidberg puts it back on. And the way that they start this is because Zoidberg sews on the professor's hand, and he goes, "You do a nice hand job, Zoidberg."
Yeah, right. I wrote that. Yeah, I wrote that. You do a nice hand job. It's crazy. And then Hermes gets put back on his body. He's like, "Oh, thank you so much." What are those?
It's his butt. What are those? I thought you were happy. Your tail
is wagging. What the? There's a Jamaican joke in this that I didn't catch as a kid. After Hermes' body gets destroyed at the wedding, Barbados Slim says "cruel runnings."
Oh yeah.
What? I was like, oh no. Cruel runnings.
They did a Cool Runnings joke previously, didn't they? I feel like in Ben-Hur and the Olympics, I think there was a Cool Runnings joke. Oh no, they talk about this. They talk about the actual Cool Runnings bobsled team or something like that.
Okay.
It is a joke. Yeah. I feel like that was just a. How old is Cool Runnings? I feel like for some reason people were talking about Cool Runnings a lot.
It's like
when
97.
This show was being made. Let's see, 93, even older than I thought.
Okay, never mind.
For some reason, Cool Runnings had a lot of staying power in the zeitgeist. People were talking about Cool Runnings for years.
Yeah, I was okay. All right, get the meter. I was watching the early Family Guy. I got another one for another meter after I finish the story. I was watching a early Family Guy, and they were playing like a game in a car. And I'm thinking of a movie. Is it a great movie? No, not really. Is it a bad movie? No, it's kind of just a good one. Really. Is it Cool Runnings? Is it Cool Runnings?
All you needed. That was all you needed to hear.
Yeah,
it's so funny. Oh man,
fam, the honky meter's back. The honky
Wait,
meter
is it
is
in this?
back.
I
Leela
missed
calls the Yetis snow honkies.
Leela racking up the honky meter.
Leela.
Amazing.
I didn't think the
Oh my
honky meter would
God.
be back, but it's back.
Wow. So we got the Family Guy meter and the honky meter right here in the same section.
It looks like they're here to stay. I didn't think they were here to stay, but they're here to stay.
Oh man. And this is going to be months and months after people probably saw the last honky
Right.
Family Guy
What if
meter.
this is just the last? What if like there's just like a 6-month gap between the honky meter?
Yeah,
they don't
we'll
even
see.
know. Yeah.
I'm trying to think if we're going to watch anything between these that would say honky. We're
Would it
going
be
to get
Rick
more
and Morty?
Family Guy because you talk about Family Guy every episode.
That's true.
But
Absolutely.
yeah.
But I don't. Do they? Well, they know. By now they would have. By now they would have seen that we would have said it if it was in Rick and Morty or not.
True. That's true.
But
That is true.
that is
I have
true.
no idea if they say it in Rick and Morty. Okay. I have a favorite scene in this movie,
Cool.
and I want to see if it's the same one as yours. Do you have a favorite scene?
Yeah, kind of.
What do you got?
I got the Trinity's Going to War song sequence. I like that a lot.
Oh, nice. That is,
lot,
I
a
do
lot.
I like that song. That's a fun song, especially
Yeah.
because finally introduces the Hanukkah zombie who was
Right.
talked about previously. We get some great Coolio action. There's it's really good.
And the Hanukkah bot still doesn't know what Hanukkah is. In the
Right.
rap, he says,
Kwanzaa-bot? Yeah.
I'm confused about his meaning, but I know that this is against it."
That's
it's really good.
That's for sure one of my favorite comedic scenes in the movie. I love that song. I also like the other song. The other song is weird. It's got like
It is weird.
it's got banjo in it. I don't know. The more I hear it, I don't know. It's like it's not one of my favorites, but I think I respect that song. Like I don't know if it's one of my favorite songs, but I'm like, this must have been hard, like to do this song.
So I was obsessed with it as a kid.
Yeah.
And when rewatching the movie, number one, I didn't realize how late it was. It's like the last act, kinda. It's like the low point in the story, but the low point in the story is really late into the film.
Right.
So
I think the episode split up. So like that during that song is when Lars proposes to Leela, right?
Right.
And then I think that's the third episode of the movie, and it ends after the wedding's called off. And then the rest, basically everything on Neptune through the big climactic fight through to the reveal of Lars, that's the final episode. That's like the fourth episode of it.
Okay.
But it does feel like if you were to try and lock down what the 3-act structure would be for this 4-episode movie, it does feel like when they lose the Planet Express and are living out in the streets, that feels like almost like plot point 2 into 3, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like going into the home stretch.
Yeah. What's your favorite, man? What's your favorite scene?
All right. My favorite scene, I love this scene. And it's actually like, I've kind of realized something like new things about it the more I've watched it. I'm obsessed with the montage of Lars and Leela's dates. I love the song. For some reason, the song they play really gets me. But it's partially the song. The music really does it for me. But here's what else I realized.
The song sounds like the end theme to Courage the Cowardly Dog. I felt like I was going insane.
Man, I haven't seen Courage. I haven't seen enough Courage the Cowardly Dog to remember the. I
should have sent it to you before we recorded this because I refused to sing it on air.
I don't know. For some reason, the song did it for me. It felt really emotional, but then also, you see all these great dates. Like I feel like I really love the buildup of their relationship, of Lars and Leela's relationship. But the other thing that I didn't realize about this sequence that blew my mind when I realized it, every single step of every date, something happens that's a sort of a conflict. The first one is them on the mini golf course, and the thing starts to shoot at Lars. What I didn't realize, this is the time paradox
He's
trying to
doomed,
catch up with
yeah.
him. He's doomed. And so that
that's
happens in
rad.
that tape. And then they fall off the cliff Wile E. Coyote style, and then the thing lands on them. That's like another one. And the third one, he gets separated from her with the bubble. Like they're all situations that could have doomed him because he's a time paradox duplicate.
That's rad.
Wild, right?
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's really good.
I also know from the DVD commentary that it's also Matt Groening's favorite sequence of the movie, but that's just a coincidence.
Okay.
But they didn't talk about that in the commentary. When I realized that, I was like, holy crap, I've seen this movie so many times. How did I not put this together? Yeah. But yeah, I really like that sequence. And I think it's kind of like the core of why I don't think the first time I saw this movie, that was my favorite sequence, but once the Lars twist became apparent, and on rewatch, Lars becomes a much more appreciated character. The first time you're kind of like, oh, he's this guy who's taking Leela away from Fry, you know?
And once you know he's Fry.
Yeah. All of a sudden it's a lot sweeter. And it's like, oh, I like this guy. Yeah. And it's interesting because he's Fry, but he's not Fry. He's still a new Fry, you know, like he's still his own person because he's had 12 years of a different life experience, you know? Although the other thing I think about that I feel like people don't think about is that he was probably got to be 50 years old in this movie. he's probably got to be pretty old. Yeah.
No, because all right, here it goes. Okay, so all right, so this movie takes place end of
3007,
end of 3007, early 3008,
right?
Meaning that Fry is 7 years older than when he gets frozen.
And
when
I think
he goes back.
I think he's like 25 when he's frozen. So he's 32 after, and then he goes back and he's there for 12 years.
Right.
So then he's 44, and then he unfreezes himself with Michelle in like 3002 or 3003. And so he's got another 4 years. And so like he's pretty much 50 years old. And by the time he's back.
I didn't think about that. What I did think about was they try to show you that time passes. They try to mess with the designs a little bit to let you know that time goes by. But it's like maybe 2007, 2008 at a certain point in the movie. Right when he realizes, not even necessarily that. When he starts to see Lilu, and time goes by after that and stuff. Like they put like these like bags under his eyes and they give him like crow's feet. It's like you guys went kind of hard. He didn't have to look this old because he looks kind of old. And I was like, why are they doing that? That's one thing I didn't realize.
Yeah, I guess they were trying. I guess they were trying to slowly hint maybe at the Lars connection. Maybe because like
but Lars doesn't have the crow's feet. Like he has the bags. Lars has the bags.
Right, he has the bags.
But I don't think he has the crow's feet. Yeah.
Huh. Maybe that explosion got rid of his crow's feet.
Aha. There you go.
Oh man. All right. So we talked a lot about Lars, talked about Leela, we talked about some of our favorite sequences. What else do we have to talk about here? I got some funny lines that I love.
Let's hear them.
I think I said this in a previous episode. I love, how in Satan's glorious name did you return?
Right.
That's so funny. I want to just drop that into everyday conversation and see how people react. This is impressive. How in Satan's glorious name did you pull this off? See if they say anything.
I like that I like them bringing back the announcer for the anthology of interest in Noster with it I wonder what his life's like, and then they just kind of freeze because they obviously nobody will know,
won't
they won't know, but you will. Lucky you.
I love that. And it's like weird because it's kind of format breaking for the show, but you don't think twice about it. It works. No, it's funny.
I'm happy that we know.
Yeah. I loved in the future when Fry comes back after being briefly in the year 2000. He comes back, and for one, I love he's in his own freezer tube. So he comes out in the year 3000, and then he moves up and he does the notch himself, and it goes to exactly 7.95 years. He just happens to perfectly do it. And then when he's back, they're trying to get rid of the time code so that the scammers don't use it anymore. And Nibbler goes, "You'll never get it, Nudar. I wiped Fry's butt clean." Let's see. Are there any other? Oh, you know what? Here's a funny little piece of info that's kind of interesting. So they came up with the idea of the narwhal, specifically because narwhals have this long horn, and so they wanted to use a creature that somehow subconsciously reminded Fry of Leela. So the single horn was supposed to remind him of Leela's one eye, and then they learned after writing the script that female narwhals generally don't have a tusk. They generally don't have the horn. And so they panicked momentarily until they then learned that on rare occasions, female narwhals do have that tooth. And so that's why they slightly changed the dialogue. They say like the rare extended toothed female narwhal or whatever. They specify that it's rare. But they're so caught up in the science of that they were like panicking over that that mistake that they made, which is pretty funny. Yeah, it's oh, and then I guess there's all the like twists at the end with Bender saving the day with the Doomsday device, which I kind of forgot about. Him sawing off the professor's hand, which is pretty funny. The sequence where he's like talking about his thought process while he's slowly sawing off his hand. And I like that it ended with him like telling the story, and then he's at the lectern, like talking to everyone. He goes, "And that's how I saved Earth and am the greatest," which is classic Bender.
I like when the scammers, they're trying to force Bender to do something. They're like, "Do it, or kill him." And he's like, "Who the hell's that?" And he's like, "I'm Scruffy." The janitor. He's, "Hang on, Scruffy."
Yeah, that's great. That's so good.
I like the Barbados Slim cereal too. I like that he dances on the cereal.
He dances on the cereal box. Yeah. The very tiny changes that we'll see in the future are that cereal boxes will be animated.
Right.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that one.
Do you ever notice? I didn't think about this until this episode. You ever think about how there's literally no security at the Applied Cryogenics Lab? They just let anyone walk into this place where there's frozen people.
That is true. That is very, very true. Yeah. I guess it makes sense because when you think about Jurassic Park, it's like, how the hell did Seymour get there?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. How did Fry get in the first place? You know, like all the doors were unlocked.
The door wasn't even locked.
That's pretty funny. Oh man. There's a fun Al Gore cameo. That is a little bit dated on the Bush versus Gore election, but it's kind of stupid.
I didn't catch that as a kid for obvious reasons. But seeing this now, I think this is the first time I've seen this movie as an adult. So it's like seeing what they did, I was like, oh.
And it's also funny because like, why was Al Gore hanging out in Florida where they were counting those ballots? Like that's it doesn't make any sense. That's not how it works.
And then they go to 2012 and Al Gore is driving a cab, which is already funny. Yeah. But not only that, he looks at the camera, he says, "Wow, man, that $100 could have brought me 1 gallon of gas."
I love that joke. I love that Al Gore is down to like poke fun at himself too.
Right. Yeah.
You know, because he obviously played himself in this, and he's like, he was down with the fact that he is going to be driving a cab in the year 2012.
Right.
Pretty funny. Oh man. You know, one thing that was interesting about this to me is like, they felt like they needed to include the Niblonians to add to like the grave nature of what was happening with the time code and like splitting the universe in two or whatever. But they're really inconsequential in the movie. They show up at the end of the first episode and they're just defeated immediately. And goes, "Our kitten class attack ships were no match for their mighty chairs." And I get that. That makes sense. Like if this stuff was happening and Nibbler was there, he wouldn't keep quiet. But it feels like they maybe could have implemented the Nibblonians into the plot a little more.
Yeah, I agree. Because the Nibbler, that's just probably just like memory of not seeing this film in so long. But I did, for some reason, my brain told me that Nibbler had a bigger role in the film.
Right.
But he does less than like bubblegum. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't do anything. The most Nibbler does is try to warn everybody, but to no avail. And then he does the wildest thing at the end. He says, "We got to get out of this universe," himself. And he just eats.
and honestly, that's not ever properly followed up. Like Nibbler comes back, and they don't ever explain how he comes back. Yeah. They do. The next time you see him, he talks, and they're like, "Wait," and he's like, "Wait, why didn't you like? Isn't it? Why aren't you surprised I can talk?" And they're like, "Oh no, like we knew you could talk from last time." I think they say you forgot to wipe our minds, which is a stupid piece of dialogue because they would never have remembered that he wiped their minds in the first place.
Right.
So it's only for the audience and makes no sense for the characters to say that.
That sucks.
But it is interesting. Like I feel like after The Why of Fry, they didn't really know what to do with Nibbler. There are some funny episodes that feature Nibbler in the revival seasons, but they don't have anything to do with him being a Nibblonian. I guess he's got a kind of a big role in Game of Tones, but they generally all of a sudden it's more about like Nibbler as a member of the Planet Express crew because they all remember he can talk now. You know what I mean? It's less about. It's
so
less
is that
about
how they are? Yeah. Does he just kind of cut the gibberish shit after this film?
I think they just do both. I think I think they just do both. When the story calls for it, he talks, and when it doesn't, he's a pet. And you know, I guess it works. You know, it's not something I'm too caught up in.
The rest of Futurama is going to be really interesting to watch because I didn't even like I said we talk about this all the time, but I remember select episodes, but none of the ones I remember have Nibbler in them. Like
right.
I don't remember any of his like prominent ones. So I've never really thought about, so damn, they just kind of don't even do anything with the Nibbler. That sucks.
I know, man. I talk about it a lot, but it feels like, especially after The Why of Fry, they tease that the universe will need saving again and that he's going to ask for help again. And they never really follow it up. Which is why I'm constantly saying they should do one more movie and do a big culmination of these unfinished threads.
Right.
Just,
and if they have Fry save the universe one more time, they can dust their shoulders off and act like this was the plan all along.
Exactly. And we always knew we were going to come back a fifth time. Yeah.
I will believe you.
We always knew we were going to get canceled 3 times, and then the last time we would come back with the finale movie.
Right.
We knew it.
The last one for real.
I am excited to go through. I'm excited to go through the rest of these movies with you. I think this is smart for us to go through these movies one at a time. I think it's going to be fun to do that because there's so much to talk about with them. They jam so much into these movies. And then I'm excited to go through the revival seasons with you, especially because you don't remember much of them. It's going to be a real trip to go through them. And while I do think like the quality bar of consistency lowers a bit, like there really are episodes in the revivals that I truly love. And those are the ones I'm most excited to like dig into with you. So that'll be good. Yeah. But who knows when that's going to happen? That's going to be in a while.
So many cartoons.
Yeah, we got so much to watch, man. So much to watch. All right, so let's wrap this up. We talked a lot about Bender's Big Score.
We did, yeah.
Written. Let's what are your final thoughts on Bender's Big Score? How do you feel about this movie as a whole?
Bender's Big Score, when I was a kid and this came out, this blew my mind. And watching the rest of the show and then watching the intro sequence again reminded me, I guess at a certain point in my life, I forgot how important Futurama was to me as a kid. Because it was really important to me for a while. Like I was obsessed with it at one point. And I just I never acted like Futurama was bad. I just always kind of hailed it as this really funny, smart show. And that was it without giving it a second glance. But going back and looking at it, I'm like, wow, this is like really, really important to my growth. And this film is a part of that, because this film meant a lot to me, as much as it did to you. Like when the show came back, like it was really, 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 really something special. Ran that DVD into the ground. I showed you, the thing has a crack in the middle of it for some reason.
Yeah.
But
hey,
yeah,
it's like the crack in the universe cracked your.
Yeah,
it
almost looks exactly like the crack in the universe. But yeah, watching it as an adult for the first time, it's not as funny as the first four. It's not as like relentlessly funny as the first four, but it is a great film. It is a great time. All the characters are, aside from like La Barbara, I guess, everybody is exactly the same, and the heart is there. Like it's all there. It's all there. It's the very definition of what you would think a Futurama film would be. When you hear direct DVD Futurama film, you think this,
right?
You know, and they take some opportunity, some of it, and you know, I get it though, because they had to split this up into 4 episodes. So if they would have got like really insane with the cinematography and the whole thing just felt like a movie, like it would have looked really stupid split up.
Right.
So it does kind of make me feel bad. Like, damn, they could have, if they didn't have to do that, they could have scoped this thing crazy. But
true,
what we got still looks great. There's still a lot of really great bits. The fight in space where like Leela leads the fight is brilliant. It looks great. It's so good. But yeah, I really, really like this film. I love it. It's exactly what you think of when you think of a Futurama movie. For me
as well. Like I have a lot of nostalgia for this movie, because it was like the return of my favorite show. Like I was so obsessed with Futurama and so sad that it was that, like, I remember I started watching Futurama when it started. Like I remember watching Futurama when it started and thinking, this is good, but it's no Simpsons, you know, because that was the height of the Simpsons. And slowly over the years, I had watched a lot of it, but it was the syndication on Adult Swim that made me realize, oh wow, this show is so good. And I started buying the DVDs. I remember one day, I think it was the Volume 3 DVD. I remember for my birthday, I'd gotten a bunch of DVD sets, including like Family Guy DVDs, Simpsons DVDs, and Futurama DVDs. And I was like all in on the Family Guy DVDs. I was like, this is like my new show. I love Family Guy. Yeah. And then I remember I had watched through those so much. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to sit down and watch Futurama. And I watched through the longest Futurama season 3, in a day, because I couldn't stop watching it. And I remember that being the day where I was just like, oh my God, I love Futurama. Like I remember specifically being like, I thought I liked Futurama, but I love Futurama. And then it was the slow realization that it was over. Like that was when I was like, wait, it's done. It's canceled. There's no new episodes. And so I watched through all of those DVDs. I watched the whole show, and I bought the game. I bought the Futurama game because I was like, I need whatever I can get of
some
Futurama.
More, yeah, give me some more.
Yeah. And so I played through that game, and that game is so hard. That is a hard game. And I beat that whole video game just so that I could watch the cutscenes that were Futurama cutscenes.
Man.
Which is something we should maybe think about for a bonus episode if we ever do a Patreon. Is we don't have to play the game, but we can watch the cutscenes because it's basically an episode.
Right.
But yeah, like this show coming back was so important to me as a fan of the show. And this first movie for me delivered so hard. Like it was better than I could have hoped for. And I do agree that it's not quite as relentlessly funny. Sometimes they go all in on jokes that aren't quite as great as some of the jokes in the original run. Mm-hmm. And they kind of keep going back to them. But it has some really funny stuff that makes me laugh every time I watch this movie.
Absolutely.
Such funny stuff. And it just has that great heart. And like, especially with the Lars, Fry, Leela storyline. I like I said, it's one of my favorite storylines in all of Futurama. As you've learned over the course of me talking about the show, I'm very attracted to the episodes that have a lot of heart. And this, I think, is one of them that does it best. And when I think about Futurama past its original run, this movie and probably 4 or 5 episodes in the revival seasons are the ones where I'm like, these go toe to toe with some of my favorites of the original run. Like, you know, it's unfortunately, I wish it was more, obviously, but this is one of those where I'm just like, this is incredible Futurama. And so, you know, to the point where we couldn't, you know, we talked about season 4 last week, and we're like, we couldn't wait. We had to do it. We had to watch this movie.
It's so funny because we kept talking about Futurama fatigue, and we kept going like, man, all right, we did our time. So it's cool.
Yep.
But immediately after we finished, we just couldn't shut up. We just kept texting each other like, well, we gotta watch Bender's Big Score. Like, we gotta do it.
It's so funny that I am too, man. I am too. Cause like, I don't know if I've ever had a like conversation about Bender's Big Score like this before.
Likewise,
you know? Yeah. And it's great, man. This was a lot of fun. I'm excited to go through these other movies with you. I don't know when we're going to record those, but it's going to be interesting since you probably don't remember much of those and haven't seen Bender's Game. And we're probably going to get more into the territory where we're not, you know, where we're maybe a little more critical of some of the stuff that Futurama's putting out than we have been thus far.
I'm not tied to any of that stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really mean anything to me. So yeah, I probably will.
It'll be interesting. I'm excited. I'm excited to go have that journey though. And you guys will see that next week. We don't know when we're going to record it.
I've got like a different beard and everything is going to be rad.
All right. Well, let's do our ranking. What's your favorite Bender's Big Score?
Okay. So number 10, I have Bender's Big Score. Number 9 is toss up between Bender's Big Score and Bender's Big Score. I'm not really too sure.
I do think at the end of this mini series of the movies, we should probably do a ranking of our movies.
Well, we already know what number 1 is.
We already know what number 1 is.
So we'll still do it. We'll do it anyway.
Yeah, who knows? You also haven't seen these in a long time, and you also have never seen Bender's Game.
Okay,
what if we go in and
put Bender's Game?
No, I don't.
I think I'm just gonna wake up like, yo, this is the one.
But what if you did? I don't think you will. But what if you did?
That's nasty. You might have to. All right. So if we record all 4 of these and I put Bender's Game at the top, I have to wake up the next morning and the podcast has to be gone. The channel has to be gone. the Spotify, it all has to be gone.
We'll delete everything.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee you that won't happen, but you know, you haven't seen it, so who knows?
They don't know, but you will.
But
in
you
3
will.
weeks. Lucky you.
Oh, man. All right. Well, that seems like a great note to end it. So let's thank the people we need to thank. Thank you to Michael Yunez for producing and editing the show. Thank you to Kerrifique for our artwork. Thank you to Jakeneutron for our theme song. Thank you to all of you for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe on all of the audio podcast platforms. If you leave a written review on Apple, that really helps us. We apparently made the top. You're not going to hear this for weeks. But apparently like we just made the top 50 film and TV charts on Spotify, which is bananas.
Nuts.
We've only put out 2 episodes and I wasn't even thinking about charts. And I got a message from a friend who was like, you were on the top 50 film and TV Spotify podcast yesterday.
When we decided to do this podcast, we were very well we were talking to each other like, yeah, you know, we're prepared to do this for a couple months without any results. Like, that's how we were thinking.
Yeah.
But it's been 2 episodes so far.
It's bonkers, man.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. We're like a dream team. Who knew that this is what they wanted?
Yeah. This is what they needed.
Yeah.
This is what everyone needed. But you know, if you give us a listen on the audio platforms, that helps a lot. But obviously, check out our YouTube channel as well. You got any last words, Tariq, before we finish this up? You got any last words?
Oh,
I'm saying it threateningly.
I wrote down, why are you talking to my penis? Matter of fact,
that's it. That's the end.
No, cut it. Cut that part out. This part is me. Bye. That's my last word is bye.